I was just thinking about everything that you said because that is our experience oftentimes is we don't have somebody to go to in most cases that's culturally competent and that can relate with us. So when you're like, yeah, but when you get in the room and they're already trying to dap you up, because it's like it's almost like, dang, I've been looking for this for years,
Hmm.
especially having a male who is trained and is a professional in this space. So I feel you on that. As far as when you see clients and when you see men that are struggling with anxiety, depression, or suicidal ideation, I think it's important to give the listeners and viewers kind of some symptoms of what you see, because a lot of times in families or relationships, we don't always know what that looks like.
Yeah.
So can you provide some context on what those symptoms may look like for those out there that's like, yeah, my partner doesn't really suffer from these things, but they actually do?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I think, I'm not gonna get into like the DSM type stuff, but as far as some telltale signs, if you notice that your partner is kind of lethargic and low energy, and those are things that you've seen for more than 2 weeks or maybe a month, that they're just not themselves. We hear a lot things that you once found pleasure in. That's a good sign. If like going to the gym or like watching sports or playing pool, whatever the case may be, if those things no longer interest you, or you have a problem getting out of bed, or you just feel like this immense weight on your shoulders, that sense of dread, like I don't know what I'm going to do. And I think it's kind of hard because as you said off air, depression and anxiety go hand in hand. And I think people try to pinpoint it. They want a diagnosis when they come in. What is it? And the thing about depression and anxiety, although there may be symptoms, it's going to be different for everybody. So I think the important thing is yeah, be aware of the symptoms, but also check in with yourself. And that's an exercise I really try to help men especially do, is how do you feel? We're familiar with it, the emotional wheel. When I first saw that thing, man, I'm like, silly, man. I know how I feel. Then I started going through the words. I was like, oh, this disappointment. Okay.
Right, right.
Like enraged. I'm like, okay, this provides some deeper descriptions. And so I think even exercises and things like that, they feel kind of elementary. But I'm gonna be honest, man, for a lot of men, the emotional competence, it's not there. You know what I mean? A lot of us have been emotionally stifled because we focused on being strong so long that most men, the thing that they can articulate the most is anger. And I think if you're angry all the time, there's a lot of despair, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear and stuff there. So yeah, anger and fear and things like that, I think, are emotions that we're wary of. But there's just so many other things that when you begin to unpack yourself, you're like, okay, I'm not angry. I'm disappointed because I expected more from myself. I expected more from my father. I expected more from my mom. I expected, more from my partner. You know what I mean? I want more from my kids. And so experiences like that, in addition to the symptoms, but really tracking where you are emotionally so you can pinpoint, because I don't often label it. It's rare that I tell someone that they're depressed, because I think we live in a generation where there's so many hot buzzwords like depression and anxiety and narcissism and all these things like that, to where it's like, I mean, that don't seem like a clinical definition, but I'm sure TikTok agrees with you. I let them label it, right? So they may call anxiety depression, and we just kind of go from there, because I think the language is important, and we can do some psychoeducation and things like that. But I don't try to put ideas in people's head, because I feel like we're a fear mongering culture sometimes, and I don't want to promote fear in therapy or pathology and telling people, oh yeah, this is what's wrong with you. You need medication. You need therapy. You need to be here. I'm like, it's just a conversation. I just want to get to know you. And then after you build that rapport, then we can tackle some things where I might say, I think you may be struggling with depression, but that's not something I come out the gate, labeling people. I allow them to use their own language and really gain context. Because it's more so about their lifestyle and what they're going through. And if some of those things are there where they're just like, yeah, man, I feel like I lost hope. I'm like, okay. we might need to talk about, getting some extra help and things like that. So I think the symptoms are important, but they look different for everybody. They look different for everybody.
And that's the thing, man. I think for our community, um, you know, things are pathologized, or even some things as far as, oh well, he's having behavioral issues, so there's a problem. Let's put him on ADHD medication or this or that. And so when you start hearing the experiences of many of us, it's like, why would we want to talk to anybody?
Hmm.
Especially if they're like, oh, something's wrong with your kid, he's acting up in class, we need to give him medicine. Because, and I'm this is generally speaking, but sometimes in the classroom it's like, what do we need to do to get this child to be quiet so we can teach the rest of the class? And
Hmm.
so you start seeing children way behind their peers, because it's like, did you meet that child or that young boy where he was at? Did you take into account the cultural aspect, or did you take into account what is going on at home? And so when we start saying, like you said, throwing around these terms, that's scary. That's, like you said, fear mongering. But the other thing I want to mention too, because I want to drive this home for the audience and our viewers that are tuning into this. So suicide remains the second leading cause of death among all adolescents.